says an error occurred, but it also says we're live. So I'm going to hit the go live button again. Maybe Jen can check to make sure we are live because I'm getting conflicting information here on my screen. But if we are live, welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Marcy Mallory. I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. And today with me, we have Amanda Galvin from the REI Distribution Center here in Bedford, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Marcy. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, it's so wonderful to have you. I'm super excited about our conversation today. We're going to be talking about stand-up paddleboards. And it's a little self-serving to have you talking today because I myself am looking to purchase a paddleboard. And I've been accosting paddleboarders across the state when I was out in state parks this summer, asking them questions about their paddleboards. But I felt ill-prepared to go out and actually make the purchase just yet. So I'm happy to be tapping into your expertise. So today is also Extra Give, and this Lunch and Learn is one of several activities we have going on today because what we want to do is to give back to our members and donors and to our social media followers with information that can help empower them to enjoy their time in the outdoors. So thank you for joining us and helping us to educate our members, donors, and social media followers. So Amanda, you are an avid stand-up paddleboarder. What got you interested in stand-up paddleboards?
Well, it always looked really, really fun. I enjoyed kayaking and just being on the water. So just getting that paddleboard and trying that was just something different I wanted to try. I was fairly used to kayaking and I wanted more of a challenge. And something that I could also do with my dogs because they do not fit in a kayak with me. So I rented one from REI first time and I gave it a shot and, I had a lot of fun. It was a challenge for me and I didn't take my dog the first time. I just thought I would try it myself, but it was so much fun. And I'm so glad that I got into it because now, as you can see, there are several paddleboards in my house. And I feel like I could always use some more. So happy to talk to you guys about paddleboarding today. And I'm sure, Marcy, you can tell us that everybody who's into paddleboarding is so happy to share that information with other people. I'm sure those people you've accosted throughout the state have been happy to share their knowledge with you as well.
They have been very, very accommodating, telling me the pros and cons of the model they purchased. And so I've learned a little bit. So I'm really happy to be learning from you today. I'm still getting kind of mixed messages. So Jen, can you let us know if we're live on both platforms? Maybe give us a thumbs up for like each platform because I can't hear you. You're muted behind the scenes.
The chat box says it's live on YouTube, but Facebook is having an error.
Yeah, that's what I keep seeing. Yeah, it still says it's not live on Facebook. So I don't know why. So maybe Jen, you can check in with Pam and figure out how we can make that live, or we'll just stay on YouTube. So, Amanda, you mentioned that you used to kayak, now you paddleboard, or you do both. Initially, for our viewers, what do you think is the primary difference for somebody that might be thinking about switching over to paddleboards?
I think it's just paddleboarding gives you that ability to get a little bit more of a workout, I think, because you're using your entire body. It's also just kind of a different experience. You can see up a little bit higher. You can do yoga on it. It's just really a versatile tool, and you can even sit down on it and use it like a kayak if you want to. I think it just has a lot of different uses. You can fish off of it. You can do all kinds of different stuff. So it's just a little more versatile, and it just gives you a little bit different experience.
Well, you mentioned about sitting on it. I've seen some stand-up paddleboards that have a conversion kit that allows you to put a back on it. So maybe talk a little bit about the different types of paddleboards that are out there, because I've seen inflatables, I've seen solid. There are so many different types. Where does one begin?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot. It's a little overwhelming if you're first shopping, as I'm sure you can attest to. So let's just start with the hardboard, because that's kind of the basic. That's what most of them are constructed out of, I would say. That's going to be a more solid board. The difference between a hardboard and inflatable, I think a lot of it has to do with where you have space to store it. I think that can kind of drive that decision. So here in my house, I have a basement that I have plenty of room to store things. So I could probably store either or. I have 2 inflatables that I own, actually 3 inflatables if you count my husband's as well. I don't actually own any hardboards. This one right behind me belongs to REI. But I don't have a ton of space for that. So the biggest difference is, I think the hardboards are actually going to be stiffer. So if you're uneasy in the water, you probably want to start with a hardboard, just because you're going to have more stability on that. It's not going to flex like an inflatable board would. The big thing to keep in mind, though, when you're shopping is hardboards can have different compositions of what they're made out of. So some of the entry-level ones are going to be made out of plastic or PVC. So they're going to be really, really tough. That's the bonus of those, but they are going to be heavier. So if you're not comfortable lugging around that heavy weight, you might consider either a lighter weight hardboard or an inflatable board, because they are actually much lighter. The next step up from there, if the intermediate board, they're going to be like epoxy or some other composite material. And those are usually lighter weight. They're still going to be durable and stiff, just like those PVC boards, but they're going to weigh a lot less. So they're going to be just easier to tote around. They also make an epoxy sandwiched with other materials. Sometimes inside there'll be wood or bamboo or some other composite material that's just going to give the board a little bit more flex, if that's something you prefer. So they can actually, harder boards, because they're stiffer, you can go faster. And as I said, you have more stability. So they're not going to like bounce around in the water like an inflatable board would. But as I said, the inflatables, they are huge space savers. So they actually roll up. You can deflate these boards. They roll up and they fit in this backpack.
Oh, you have it nearby.
I don't have them in a backpack, but this is one of the backpacks they come in. So it's not small still, but you can roll it up, put it in there, and most of them have these straps so that you can carry them around. So that's also a nice thing if you need to hike into your destination. You can actually put this right on your back and carry it in. Now the weight differences between those are going to be pretty great. Like a hardboard can range from 30 to 50 pounds. That's the higher end, but they're going to be a little bit heavier. But some of these lighter weight boards, like this one here behind me, this one is actually only about 20 pounds. So it can save you a lot of weight to carry that in if that's important to you. And if you have some struggles with lifting a lot of weight, that's going to be a big bonus for the inflatables.
And I would think too, your mode of transportation. So if you have a car that can accommodate a roof rack, a hardboard would be good. But if you don't have a way to put it on the roof rack, and I once had a kayak fly through my car and go into the windshield. I was hesitant to put things inside of the car. Having it be able to be compact would allow you to fit it in the car, like if you have a convertible or something, and for people too. I mean, exactly, you can put that as a piece of luggage and quite easily, take it to your location.
Right, exactly. That's a huge bonus. You can transport it in pretty much any vehicle that you have. And another thing to consider too is if you have the inflatable boards and that break down into these small backpacks, they also make breakdown paddles so that you can also fit that into your backpack. So your normal paddle is going to be pretty long. You want it to be a little bit taller. This is actually not adjusted to my height right now, but it can get even longer. So this is going to be harder to transport too. So with the inflatables, they make these 3-piece breakdown paddles so that they can actually fit into your backpack as well. And they just connect together, and you can adjust them the same way you do your normal paddles, but they can fit into your backpack. So that's the nice thing. If you're going to have an inflatable, to get a breakdown paddle like that so you can transport that easily as well.
So I know that when you're fitting a paddle for your canoe, the test, or for your kayak, so how do you fit your paddle for a stand-up paddleboard?
Yeah, so it's going to be different depending on your use, but I'm just going to stick with your basic flat water lake kayaking or paddleboarding, something like that. So when you stand up, and you reach your arm up. So I don't know if you can see the top of my arm. So you're reaching your arm up. You want it to be about right here into the crook of your arm. And that's because it may seem like it's tall up there, but when you're actually in the water, it's going to be down below you. So you want it to be about right here when it's in the water. So yeah, the rule of thumb, like I said, is when you're standing straight up and you have your arm up, you want it to fit about right there in your wrist. And that's a good length right there. And a lot of these paddles are adjustable. So like mine, you can adjust the length. So whatever feels right for you, you can play around with it and find that perfect length that you want.
Right. Or if somebody borrows it and is taller than you or has longer arms.
Exactly. Then it's going to be able to be used by more people. And you can adjust it based on what you're doing with it. So if you want it a little bit longer and you want some heavy, strong strokes, then you can adjust it for that. So that's kind of nice. Not all of them have that adjustment. Some of them are fixed length. But I wouldn't recommend getting one of those until you know exactly what size you want for your use.
Yeah, and how you're going to use it.
Exactly.
Now, I've seen people flat water kayaking and paddleboarding. I've seen them stand-up paddleboarding camping. I was out on one of the river islands one day, and there was a guy there with his dog, and his tent was set up. And I'm like, "Where's your boat?" And he's like, "Oh, it's my paddleboard." So he and all of his gear and his dog, paddled out in the Susquehanna out to one of the river islands. And I've seen people whitewater stand-up paddleboarding. So I imagine how you intend to use it would influence the type of stand-up paddleboard that you want to purchase.
Exactly. So basic, there are 4 different types of paddleboard. So I'll just kind of go over that really quickly. There's going to be an all-around board, which is pretty much what I have. These 2 behind me. I don't know if you can see this bottom one here too, but I'm going the wrong way.
Okay, I see it now.
Yeah, so they just have this round nose, and they're going to be flat on the bottom. And what that is, it's called a planing haul. So there's 2 different types of hauls, a planing haul versus a displacement haul. The planing haul is actually just flat. So if you think about when it's on the water, it's going to be pushing down on that water and just gliding on top of it. Okay. So you're not going to get as much speed, but you're going to it's going to be more stable because it's pushing down on the water.
More points of contact.
Exactly. And then the displacement haul is a little bit different. If you think about how a kayak or a canoe is shaped, it actually has this V shape in the front. That's exactly what a displacement haul is. It's going to push the water from side to side. It's going to push the water out of the way instead of going right over it. So you're going to cut through that water and be able to get a little bit more speed. So these round boards here, they're a good all-around board. They are made for flat water. And then your displacement hauls are made for more of a racing or for speed. The other type of board is what I have over here. This is a river surfer. Actually, it is a surfboard made for, or a paddleboard made for surfing on the river.
Oh, yes, yes. I saw pictures of those in action.
Aha! So those actually they are planing halls as well. They are flat, but they are shaped a little bit differently. That goes into a whole different aspect, the rocker of it, but we'll just stick with the hulls for right now. This gets really complicated, but we're just trying to go easy here. But your good all-around board is going to be this flat planing hall, because you can actually go a lot, or you'll be a lot more stable in the water with that. As you mentioned, people can load up their paddle boards and go camping on them. This would actually be a really nice board for that, because this one is 11 foot long. So you have plenty of room for all your stuff on the front or on the back. You can fit your dog, you can fit all types of stuff. And the nice thing is it's a hardboard, so it can hold more on there because it's not going to flex with the weight of what you have on there. So if that's something you're interested in, is camping off of it, it might be better to get a hardboard if you have the space for it. But you can also do that on an inflatable board as well. This one down below, I have loaded it up and gone camping before on it. I didn't go too far, so I don't really know, how it would have performed, but it did okay. It flexed a little bit, but it worked too. The nice thing is because you're standing in the middle of this board. So if you have 11 foot, you're going to be standing right in the middle of it. So you have some room on either end to add some stuff for you. And if it's nice and wide like these are, they're going to be really stable and be able to hold more weight.
So does the length, is that determined by how you want to use it? Or is it determined, like with skis, sometimes your length is determined by your height for cross country. So what is determining the length of your paddleboard?
Yeah, so that's going to be kind of based on your use as well. If you are just going to be in flat water and you just want to go for a quick little paddle and play around, you could go for a shorter board. 11 foot is a pretty standard length for a beginner. That's going to give you some speed because of the length. So the longer it is, the more speed you can get. If you think about how it sits on the water, it's just going to glide over the water. So the longer it is, the easier it's going to glide. But when you have a longer board, you're also giving up a little bit of maneuverability. So if you need to weave in and out of rocks on some water, that may not be the best length. You may want to go a little bit shorter. So it really depends on how you want to use it. If you're just going to go on a lake or something, really the longer the better. And if you're a beginner, if you choose a longer board than you think you need, that's probably a good idea as well, because you're going to be more stable and be able to use it in more situations.
So what other features are there on the paddleboard? I remember watching one guy, took it over to the water, and then he flipped it over and he was putting on fins, I'll call them for lack of a better word. So he was assembling things on his board. So what other features should people be looking at when they're thinking about purchasing one?
Well, you got it right on the nose. They are called fins. So a lot of boards have them already attached. So some of them you can't change. They're going to come up with a fin configuration that's best for the board that you're purchasing. But the thing to know about fins is they're going to help you track straight. Let me show you a couple different ones here. So my inflatable board down below here has 3 little fin boxes that you can actually switch out. As you said, you assemble it pretty much. And my board came with several different sizes to choose from. I didn't know what to pick when I first started, so I had to watch a bunch of videos and find out. But basically, here's the longest fin that I have. This one generally goes in the middle. So like I said, there's several different configurations. Mine is a 3. So it has 1 in the middle and 2 on each sides. So this one is longer. It's going to go in the middle. It's going to cause your board to go straighter. And the longer you have it, the straighter you can go. If you are going where you're going to have rocks, such as like a river or even a shallower lake, they do make shorter fins for those. And these are going to still keep you tracking in the water. Tracking is just going straight. That's going to keep you tracking in the water, but it's going to give you a little bit more maneuverability, and it's not going to hang down as far into the water. Then they even make these little short ones too. So there's several different kinds. I don't want to go too much into the configuration and everything, but your boards are already going to have spaces for the fins. So really the easiest thing to do is just play around with it and see which works for you. I personally, I don't do too much with my larger boards. I pretty much am just in lakes. So I choose the longest ones that I can use based on the depth of the water on both the middle and the sides, just to give me the most straight paddle that I can get. Because mostly I'm just trying to go further and explore different things. So it'll get you there faster and straighter.
Excellent. That's good to know. Are there other features of a paddleboard that one must consider when making a purchase?
Well, yeah, as you said, some of them also do have seats that attach to them. These are made more for people with mobility issues, or even if you want to go fishing. Some paddleboards even have rod holders so that you can fish off of them. And those seats make it easier for you to sit and do those things. And you can still use it, with standing up and everything, but those seats are there so you can sit down and use them as well. Another thing to look at if you are using it on flat water or even in the ocean, you can use these in the ocean, is to get yourself a paddle leash. So this is just a little leash here that connects to your foot or your ankle, and then this connects to your board here. So that way, if you do fall off, then your board can't run away from you. And I don't know if anybody's ever been surfing, but if those boards get loose from you, not that too many people are going to be surfing with these, but if those get loose from you, they could become projectiles and go pretty far. So if you're in that kind of situation, you want to make sure that you have a paddle leash to keep your board near you. Paddle leashes are not recommended if you're using them in a river or someplace that they can become wrapped around a rock or something like that. That could be a safety hazard. But those are good to have in a lake or in the ocean if you're using them there.
Yes. I had read that about whitewater to be careful.
Yes.
And I think another important device, no matter what you're paddling, is to have a proper PFT or personal flotation device or life jacket.
That's right. This is my life jacket. I take it with me on every water adventure that I go on. I know in Pennsylvania, you only have to have it on your boat, except for right now, November 1st through April 30th, you always have to have your life vest on. But I always have mine on no matter where I am. Just, you never know what's going to happen. You just want to be safe and be protected. If you are paddleboarding where there could be rocks, like a river or something, it is a nice idea to also have a helmet to protect that brain. And if you're taking your furry travelers with you, they also need a life jacket.
Yes. And what's nice about those too is the handle. We use that to pick our dog up all the time, to put her back in the boat if she's out. Or
oh yeah,
great way
This has been very helpful to try to get them back on, because I don't know about you, but My dog does not like to stay on the board. So it's more of a diving board for him, but I get to pick him up out with his little handle. But it gives me some assurance that he's safe and he's not going to be in any danger without his life jacket.
Yes. And I think you made a good point. You never know what's going to happen. You might be a great swimmer, but if you go overboard and hit your head, you don't have control.
Exactly.
Whereas sometimes the water is colder than you realize, and you could quickly become hypothermic. So having a PFD on any time of the year is really wise.
Yes, definitely. Another thing to consider with the inflatable boards, they're going to be a little bit less durable than the hardboards are, but they're also going to have a little bit of give. So if you're going to hit a rock or something, sometimes the inflatable boards are better because they're not going to crack. They're just going to give a little bit. And sometimes they could even wear a hole in them. But most inflatable boards do come with these little waterproof kits that you can patch your board. I have never had to do that, and I don't really want to.
Not wood for you.
Exactly. But it is there if you need it. So that's something to think about too, is the inflatable boards. They might seem like you pop them and you're done, but they are fixable as well, especially once you get into the higher price points and they have kind of thicker rubber or whatever material they use, they can be fixed. So that's something to think about too.
And that was something I was going to ask. It's almost like you're reading my mind. I think about a question and like you touch on it. And one of the gentlemen I spoke to, he had two different ones, and one was like a thinner material, and he realized, for his weight and what he was using it for, it wasn't quite as durable as he wanted. So he gave that to his 10-year-old daughter, and he got himself a thicker. So, I mean, I guess that is something else. If you're looking at an inflatable, you want to look at the durability or the thickness of the material from which it's constructed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they definitely vary a lot in quality and everything like that. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Always check the reviews. It's always a good idea.
Yes. And, I imagine there's a very large price range in terms of stand-up paddle boards. But can you give us like an average if somebody's thinking about purchasing one? What might they be looking at on a low end or the very high end?
I mean, you can get a relatively inexpensive one for a few $100s. But like I said, that's going to depend on the material, a lot of it. So they are often heavier and things like that. They can get a little bit pricey. My paddleboard down here below, that is this inflatable NRS board. That one actually runs about $1,200-$1,300, somewhere around there. It's not a cheap one, but it's really, really durable, and it will last me a really long time. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention about the inflatable boards is if you're into yoga and you want to do some yoga on your paddleboard, these actually offer a lot more cushion, especially if you don't inflate them all the way. They're going to have a little bit of give, and so they'll be a lot more comfortable to do your yoga poses on. That's one of the primary things I like to do on my inflatable board, and it's just perfect for that. If you're going to do that, though, another thing to consider is the width of your board. We talked about length already, but the width is also really important. So the narrower the board, the faster you're going to go through the water. But if you go wider, it's going to be more stable. So my inflatable NRS board here is 36 inches wide. So it's pretty wide, but it gives me a ton of stability. I could like rock back and forth on it and I'm not going to fall off. So that's something else to consider when you're thinking about your use for it and what you want it for. I can't get a lot of speed because it is wide and it's long, but it's perfect for what I want it for.
Nobody wants to take a dive when they're doing downward facing dog.
No, they don't.
Are there any other features that you think are important for people to consider? And I saw that Jen had posted you have a video on the REI website that people can watch to, maybe reinforce some of the things that we're discussing now.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that you want to look at when you're purchasing one for yourself is making sure that you fall in that weight range of the particular board that you're looking for. So that weight range is going to be based on the volume of the board, which is going to be the length, the width, and the actual thickness of the board. So the more volume, obviously, the more weight you can put on it. So when you're thinking about what board you're looking at, you want to also consider your weight plus your gear's weight, or any, your camping gear. If you want to go camping on it, you need to take all that into consideration and find a board that's going to be, at the higher weight range that you think you'll need. And you have to think about too of how that weight range is figured out. So if you're at the high end of your weight range, you're going to be pushing down on that board, and it's going to be sitting lower into the water. So it's going to have more drag whenever you're trying to do things. So if your board is rated to 250 pounds and you're 245 pounds, it's probably not going to be the best for you. You're going to be struggling and going a little bit more sluggish and slower than you want to go. So it's always a good idea to kind of size up for your weight. And another thing to think about is, the lighter end of the weight range, that doesn't really matter as much, because if you're too light for the board, it's still just going to sit up high in the water and you're going to, be able to glide pretty easily. So the lower end of the weight range doesn't matter as much, but the high end you need to think about.
That's good advice. And I imagine you have to think about, what's my normal way I'm going to be using it? Your dog's weight.
Right.
What about dog nails? I mean, is it durable enough? Obviously, you're taking your dogs on them.
Well, see, most of these boards have this deck board on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just this thick foam, and that's going to be a pretty good protection against your dog's nails. There are parts of the board that don't have that. That's normally just where your feet go. But a lot of these inflatable boards and hardboards, they're durable enough for your dog's nails. They're durable enough to hit against rocks and all that stuff too. So, they could scratch them up or even puncture them, but I've never had that happen. And that's just something that you can repair if it does happen. Okay. But just keep them trimmed, normal dog movements.
like you would always. And it looks to me, am I seeing a DCNR launch permit on the one kayak, the one stand-up paddleboard back there?
Yeah, of course. Anytime you want to take them onto, a Pennsylvania waterway, you want to make sure you have a launch permit on it. I got mine. I think mine are the DCNR ones. As you said, Fish and Boat Commission also makes launch permits. But they're required on Pennsylvania waterways. So I have them on all of my boats. I don't want to tell you how many there are, but I have them, yes.
I have a problem with it as well. So we won't talk about how many boats I have. But, it's what a great way to release stress and spend time with family and friends. And that's, some way of being on the water, whether it's a kayak, canoe, or a stand-up paddleboard, or even just standing in the water.
Yeah, exactly. And when you buy your first board, don't think that you need to buy the $1,200 inflatable board, the nicest one. You can just get out on the cheapest thing, on the most budget-friendly one you can find. Whatever gets you outside, it doesn't really matter. Just get out there.
Now, you had mentioned that you had rented one from REI. Do they still rent that type of gear if that's somebody, is thinking about it? I know some of our state park concessionaires have stand-up paddle boards where people can rent and give it a try. Because, if you purchase a car, oftentimes you'd give it a test drive. So sometimes it might be helpful to be on a board and have an experience to see if there's features that you like or dislike.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our stores do have them. Some of them don't. So it's best to check with the particular store that you're near. But a lot of them do have rentals available that you can try them out. There's even some boat houses in some of our far away stores that have that kind of thing for you to try as well.
That's good to know. I don't see if we have any questions from anyone. Unfortunately, we ended up not going live on Facebook. There was an issue, but it is on YouTube. We will post the link on Facebook so that it can run later for people that weren't able to join us. I don't see any questions. I don't know if Jen is in the background. If she has a question, maybe now she's put this on her Christmas wish list to get a stand-up paddleboard. As I mentioned earlier, it is definitely on my list. I've only used them a couple of times, but I really enjoyed it. And I like the core workout of being on the stand-up paddleboard. But I also enjoy.
That's the really nice thing is you can make it a nice leisurely paddle. You can paddle out a little bit, sit down and enjoy your surroundings, or you can paddle 10 miles and get a good workout. It's just so versatile on what you can do with it. It's just a really nice tool to have in your backpack. You know, your big backpack.
Literally. You know, it was interesting. We were in Oregon 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, and we were overlooking the Columbia River, and we saw somebody commuting from Oregon back over to home in Washington. You know, they have their suit on, they're on their stand-up paddleboard, just working their way across the river. So it could be your method to get to and from work or activities as well.
I have seen somebody in Seattle go across the Puget Sound with one of those to commute to work because the commute was quicker, which seems crazy, but
and you'd be so relaxed on the way home. When you get home, you'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, excellent. This was very informative. Are there any other resources that you wanted to point out to people as they're thinking about it? We shared the REI website. We've shared the video. Are there any other resources that you found helpful as you were thinking about purchasing your first stand-up paddleboard?
I mean, honestly, my best resource is going to, you know, my friends that do that, or even an outfitter, and really just get the information from people who know the best. And you can tell them exactly what you're looking for, and they'll help you, you know, point you in the right direction. That's really the best advice I have for you. If you want to come paddleboarding with me, try mine out. Come on over.
I might take you up on that. Yeah, and I do, as you mentioned earlier, I found that when I did ask people about it, they were always very willing to take the time and answer my questions and tell me about the pros and cons of their particular board. You know, because I have a kayak at home that I like, but I don't love. And, you know, I'll share with people what I don't like about it from my perspective. Just kind of like make sure there are features of each board that your stand-up paddle boards that you like or wish you could create your own.
Exactly. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. With the inflatable boards, it also comes with a pre-paddle workout to pump up your board.
Oh.
So that's another thing to consider. For me, I also have a one that I plug into my truck and helps me a little bit, but they usually come with one of these like bicycle style pumps that you just plug in and you pump away. That's right.
Nothing like a pre-workout. Little warm up.
I mean, I didn't ask for that, but it's okay. It's worth it.
And that thing was very large too, so you'd have to factor that in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean that fits in the bag too. Everything kind of fits down in the bag pretty easily. So
and how much do you think it weighs once you have everything in your bag?
Probably that one weighs probably 30 pounds ish, somewhere around there. It's not too bad. I mean, my longer NRS board, it weighs a little bit more. I don't know exactly how much that one weighs, but it is significantly heavier just because it has more material. But I'd say probably 35 pounds, somewhere around there.
Not bad. Easy enough to carry into a remote lake.
Yeah.
The opportunity to explore it.
Exactly.
This has been very informative. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Your passion for your sport shows through, and your knowledge as well. So thank you so much for that. So I'm gonna end the broadcast, but if you can hang on for just a second.
Sure.
Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you we're able to get some tips, and maybe we'll see you on the water next summer. Thank you.
Thanks.